Is rising fast.
And students in Valley Park pitch in to protect their school from the rising Merrimack. The ground floor of the elementary school is in jeopardy, so the day was spent moving valuables like computers and paperwork upstairs. Classes there are canceled for Monday.
And now, just imagine the
rising even higher than it did this summer.
2 News Team's Elliot Davis is live now in Valley Park. Elliot?
Well, Don, as the river rises, so does the fear, and an army of people here at Valley Park School and in surrounding communities are bracing for the worst. Here at Valley Park Elementary School, they fear their building will flood. They pack up boxes and move what they can to higher ground. In nearby Pacific, families hope sandbaggers will do the trick. Pitch in to help homeowners.
They can and get out tonight. The river's taking over the town. Good evening. The Merrimack River is closing in on Valley Park tonight.
Townspeople have been told to evacuate, and no one is spared. The 2 News Team's Rochelle Rowe is in Valley Park with that story. Rochelle?
Well, Mandy, everyone is moving out tonight, even the fire department. By this time tomorrow night, there's going to be a couple of feet of water right here at the Valley Park Fire Department. Now, the fire chief is waiting until the last minute to evacuate his department and these trucks, which will have to go to the Catholic Church. What is ironic is that this town avoided this summer's flood. Now it's their turn.
You'll see this one is about 35 and 38 foot.
Yeah. As Valley Park's police chief watches the Merrimack River, the rest of the town is busy getting out.
I've got everything loaded up and ready to go. As soon as the water gets here, I'm gone.
The post office is moving to higher ground, so is the fire department. The fire chief tries not to worry too much how his men will respond to calls.
You know, when you have 4 foot of water in the street and buildings burning, can't even find a fire hydrant then.
This isn't Valley Park's first encounter with the Merrimack River. Folks around here are still talking about the flood of '82 when the river reached nearly 40 feet. Now, the government did agree to build a levee out here. Unfortunately, it won't be built in time for the flood of '93.
We've been praying that the levee would be built before this would occur again in Valley Park.
At Bill Jones Merrimack Valley Bank, sand piles sit outside the door waiting for a big sandbag party. Memories of what happened last time are for everyone to see. Soon this bank, along with so many other homes and businesses here, will be empty.
We just want the grime left. We'd like to have our furniture intact.
It teases you. And now with what they're saying, and it's muddy, and they escaped first time, they're taking it serious. I hope they are.
Well, Laclede Gas is going to be working all throughout the night, turning off gas to this area. Just to give you an idea how fast the Merrimack is rising, today it stood at about 23 feet. By this weekend, it's going to be at about 32 feet. That's a rise of almost 10 feet. Mandy?
It's going to be a tense weekend. Well, Rochelle, the Valley Park Fire Department made it through the summer flood, as you mentioned, and they came to the rescue of flood victims, and now it appears they need a little help.
That's right, Mandy. It is kind of ironic. You know, they were at Channel 2 Studios this summer presenting a check for about $3,000 for flood victims, and they say now they hope that folks will come out here and help out.
Let's hope they return the favor. Thanks, Rochelle.
Be nice for them.
Well, just minutes ago, word from Chesterfield, new fears that temporary
elementary and junior high school packed up early today and moved out. By nightfall, the sandbaggers were out in force protecting businesses. And in neighborhoods, the moving vans give the appearance of a mass exodus from Valley Park. You know, it has to be pretty disappointing for the folks out here in Valley Park. They made it through the entire great flood of '93 without a drop of water on their street. But now with the Merrimack River on the rise, they probably won't be so lucky this time. The Howard family is new to this area, only living here about a year. Tonight, they're taking it easy with friends after packing up everything on the first floor of their home. And like a lot of folks out here, they're taking their belongings to storage.
We're going to stay upstairs until it comes up, and then we'll go out the window and take the boat out.
We figured if we made it through summer, we had it licked. Wrong.
This is new for the Howards, but for people like Gary Brown and his family, it's just another flood. And the last big flood they remember was back in 1982. You expect this sort of thing since you've been out here since '82 and so forth.
Yeah, we expect it. It's any time. It's just in the cards, you know.
Well, so far there's been no reports of very heavy flooding out in the Valley Park area. However, a lot of people think by this Saturday and Sunday expect to see about 1 or 2 feet on some of the areas we just showed you a moment ago. Back to you.
As Bob Richards just told us, it's going to be a long weekend in Valley Park. We'll have more on that in just a little bit.
Obviously, it's going to get worse before it gets better once again. Well, tonight, St. Louis County is warning the
Hill area.
They see it. Good evening.
In Valley Park tonight, a tense waiting game.
As the Merrimack River creeps higher, so do fears that homes will be lost. The 2 News Team's Bruce Gordon is in Valley Park with the latest. Bruce, bring us up to date.
Tom and Betsy, frustration is the watchword here tonight. The Merrimack River is simply rising too fast for a sandbag wall of defense to be built around the town. And so individuals and small groups save what they can and hope for the best. The biggest job tonight, saving the complex of schools that houses Valley Park students K through 12. A small army of sandbaggers has worked through the day to shore up doorways and keep these buildings dry. Most equipment and furniture has already been moved up or out. Predictions have the Merrimack rising another 4 feet by tomorrow. If that's true, these efforts should be enough.
We couldn't have done it without the community's help, and I think that we'll be okay unless we get something very unforeseen as far as rain in the next 12 hours or so.
A couple of blocks away, a sandbagging effort sputters along. This latest round of flooding has taken lots of people by surprise. So these helpers are having a tough time helping.
You're short of sand, bags, and people.
And people.
Other than that, everything's going swell, huh?
Well, unless nobody needs the bags anymore, then we're fine.
Getting from here to there is anything but fine. Many Valley Park roads are already underwater, stalling the plans of folks out for a Saturday night on the town. A ghost town in large part. Townspeople have spent this day packing up what they can, leaving their homes behind. Valley Park is another in a string of local communities that thought they had beaten the flood of '93.
They didn't get anything from this last one, but it's coming in now, and they're getting worried.
Already, the flooding has caused a number of Valley Park businesses to close early. The school system will likely be shut down at least through the middle of next week. Hundreds of homeowners are displaced. Some will stay with friends and relatives tonight, others at a just set up shelter at the nearby Sacred Heart Catholic Church. All of this, Tom, and the water is still rising.
Well, Bruce, you mentioned evacuations. Will anybody stay behind?
I'm told a handful of folks are staying behind, those with 2-story homes, but a word of caution for those folks. Of course, many of the utilities have been shut off, and so if there is some kind of a medical or other kind of emergency, they could be in trouble. It's really not recommended to stay behind, but a few are braving the storm.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce. In Arnold,
Sacred Valley Park will open its doors, and the Red Cross is already starting to set up beds inside to allow people to spend the night here as they've been flooded out of their homes here in Valley Park.
Very similar to what we just saw a month and a half ago. Thank you, Steve Janikowski, live in Valley Park.
As residents rush to escape the floodwaters. Good evening, I'm Kay Quinn.
And I'm Randy Jackson. Our top story tonight, hundreds of South County families are hoping they've seen the worst of the new flooding.
The Merrimack River has crested and could soon be on its way down, but not before flooding hundreds of homes in Valley Park. That's where News Channel 5's Michelle Hoffland has been all day long, and she joins us now live with the latest. Michelle?
Well, Kay and Randy, yesterday afternoon and overnight, the water here rose 4 feet, but basically all day since we have been out here, the water has remained at about exactly the same spot, and that's very encouraging news for the people who live here. And basically, all the folks who live here in Valley Park, well, you can split them up into 2 groups, the people who are flooded and the ones who are close to being flooded.
You expect to see the U.S. Coast Guard making rescues in the ocean, but this large body of water is the swollen Merrimack River. Throughout the day, the Coast Guard plucked families out of their homes in Valley Park and ferried them to dry ground.
They say it's going to storm tonight, you know, so then I didn't want to get caught there anymore tonight.
On the other side of town, some people are holding out.
It ain't coming up no more.
Carl Adams is busy building a sandbag fortress around his office. The basement has already turned into a pool of murky river water. Now he hopes his remodeled first floor will remain dry.
We're just trying to get prepared here in case the water gets in here. That's upstairs.
Rising waters didn't keep the faithful out of church today, though the service did start late to allow time for parishioners to find their way past flooded streets.
It is ironic that in our church, water is a sign of life, a sign of birth, a sign of hope. And yet that same water is also a sign of destruction.
Well, the Catholic Church here in Valley Park was extremely crowded today, not just inside the church, but around it. You see, because of all this flooding, that Catholic Church is also the city post office. It's also the fire department and also the Red Cross shelter. Now, there's many things that are going to be changing tomorrow for the folks around here. First of all, the Valley Park School is going to be closed, not because it's flooded, but because many of the people who live around here can't get to school. Also, for morning commuters, southbound 141 will be closed at Big Bend, so don't try to get there on your way to work this morning. Reporting live from Valley Park, I'm Michelle Hoffman. Back to News Channel 5.
All right, thank you very
Thanks
much, Michelle. People living along area rivers, of course, hope the worst has passed.
John Fuller's in the Doppler 5 Weather Center.
Weeks, if possible. So now we're just trying to save it so it doesn't ruin, you know, what we've already done to it.
Debbie and Jerry Fager have spent $9,000 replacing floors, walls, electrical wiring. The grass was just beginning to come back. The water is also back in Chesterfield, Missouri. Many of the 200 businesses flooded this summer are flooded again. And there are new victims.
Some areas which escaped the flooding this summer are now underwater. That's because the rain is coming from a different part of the country.
In June and July, weeks of heavy rain in the upper Midwest states caused the Mississippi to flood. This time, days of rainfall in western Missouri and Kansas have caused the Missouri River and other tributaries which feed into the Mississippi to overflow. One of those tributaries is the Merrimack River, which normally runs next to Valley Park. Now the river is in the homes and businesses of this small town, hitting people who thought they had escaped the great flood of '93.
We lucked out. We lucked out, but not this time.
The water is expected to crest tomorrow, and this time it should not take long to recede. But as people here know, days worth of flooding can wipe out weeks worth of cleanup. Kathy Wolf, ABC News, St. Louis, Missouri.
And we'll be back in a moment.
Floodwaters hit Valley Park. No one knows yet how extensive the damage is. Residents are praying the worst of the river's onslaught is over.
People are literally watching the river's next move. The 2 News Team's Walter Richards is in Valley Park to bring us up to date. Walter?
You know, Tom, it's been a day of waiting for the Merrimack River to crest. People here believe the real danger is over, but now the heartbreak begins. Coast Guard rescuers had to boat James Metcalf to dry land. He braved the high water to guard his home.
Well, I'm a diehard, I guess. I want to stay and protect my stuff.
Son Brian warned his dad when the water kept coming up.
He's stubborn, didn't want to leave. So we got most of his valuables out there, and he wants to stay with the rest of it.
And no need to worry too much. James Metcalf had his .30-30 rifle by his side.
I don't think he'd have used it, but you never know.
Metcalf tells me he'll be back to get his stuff and move to higher ground in Valley Park. Cecilia Hopper and her family stands on the corner of Vest and Beckett Drive, watching the high water and waiting for her husband to return with a status report on their flooded home.
We packed everything up, but we still have a lot of stuff, you know, it was up in our deck and that, you know, so hopefully it's not going to float anywhere.
While she hopes for the best, Cecilia knows this is the last time she wants to be a flood victim. The family will move far away from the river. Untouched by water, the town's Sacred Heart Church stands as a monument of hope, providing shelter for anyone, just as it did during the flood of 1982.
There's nowhere else to go, so we're here at Sacred Heart, and I'm really thankful for everybody helping us here.
The name Sacred Heart is a sign of compassion, so it's interesting how it's working out. And people are adjusting.
Adjusting, a word Valley Park residents know all too well. Now, as heartbreaking as the flood can be, it has still provided a source of recreation for people. Everyone has spent part of their day today watching the river. Back to you, Tom.
You can believe that. Thank you, Walter.
Thanks, Walter. A scare this morning for river.
Dozens of homes are already swamped, but things appear to be stabilizing this evening. News 4's Eric Thomas says townsfolk are wondering if the worst is over or if this is just the calm before another storm.
The home Barbara James and mate Larry Connor share has taken on the air of a boarding house. 15 to 20 relatives and neighbors and their furniture have filled every nook and cranny. All refugees from the floodwaters just a few blocks away.
We're just all here. We had no place to go. I mean, people don't have money to
There was no storage open anywhere. I mean,
we called everywhere.
So she volunteered her home.
I'm the only one of the family that's got the biggest place and was further south that they could, you know, stay at.
How long can you live like this with 15 or 20 people in the house?
As long as I have to. If there ain't people here, I'm not happy.
Valley Park officials estimate more than 100 homes and businesses have been hit hard by the swollen Merrimack River, which is currently more than 17 feet over flood stage and could go up another foot by the time it crests tomorrow. Most residents on the east side of town chose to get out as the waters rose. Charles Paquette waded back in today to check the damage.
When I got out there, I opened the door, and there was just debris and everything just floating everywhere. And I don't know, it was devastating.
But others chose to stay, which kept the police and Coast Guard on alert.
I'm always concerned about someone's welfare when they don't have a good ingress and egress out other than a boat. But that's why the Coast Guard boats are here, and if we have a problem, we can immediately get down there.
Volunteers spent much of the weekend sandbagging around Valley Park schools. Now, the water may not ever get here, but many roads in this area have become impassable, so school officials have called off classes for at least the next couple of days. And the roads around the schools aren't the only problem. Highway 141 remains shut down at Interstate 44, and police ask motorists to avoid 141 south of Big Bend altogether to head off rush hour problems tomorrow. But with more rain possible tonight, officials would be glad if rush hour tomorrow is their biggest headache. In Valley Park, Eric Thomas, News 4.
And Eric tells us that this is the worst flooding Valley Park has faced since 1982.
Merrimack is expected to crest tomorrow, ending a weekend of misery. The 2 News team's Walter Richards was there.
Coast Guard rescuers had to boat James Metcalf to dry land. He braved the high water to guard his home.
Well, I'm a diehard, I guess. I want to stay and protect
the highway there. Route 141 at Interstate 44 is closed tonight, and so are the entrance ramps to the freeway. Now, southbound 141 at Big Bend is also closed. The closing comes as hundreds of families have been forced out of their homes because of the swollen Merrimack. News Channel 5's Michelle Hoffland shows us how people there are coping with the high water.
Same pictures, different month, different location. These streets and homes were dry this summer when all the other low-lying areas in the county looked like this. Well, now it's Valley Park's turn. 90% of all the streets in the eastern half of town are underwater, and about 300 families are flooded out. People here haven't seen water like this since 1982. The U.S. Coast Guard spent the entire day rescuing families, many who didn't want to move out.
Because I'm afraid somebody's going to get in there and steal our house and break in it, take things.
On the other side of town, some people refuse to get out.
It ain't coming up no more.
The rising waters began spilling out of the Merrimack River Thursday. You could watch the water rise. Right over there is the Merrimack River, and it's rising and moving in very quickly. You see this water right here covering the road? Well, there wasn't even any water on this road 5 minutes ago. That was 24 hours ago. Now, take a look at the same street. We had to take a boat to get out here today. Now, if I were standing on the ground right now, the water would be all the way up to my waist. 16-year-old David Hodges did walk on that street, ferrying ice and food to people waiting out the floods.
Anybody that needs help, we'll try to help them.
The water hasn't reached the Valley Park School, but it is fairly close. City Hall is surrounded by water, and the fire department and post office have been moved to the Catholic Church in town. People here have seen all this before, but they're praying they won't see it again for a long time. In Valley Park, Michelle Hoffland, News Channel 5.
And because of the problems in Valley Park, the Red Cross has opened a shelter there. The shelter is located at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church on Ann Avenue. The church is also the temporary home for the fire department and the post office. Well, residents along the Big River don't have
victims of the flood, as they all keep their eyes on nearby creek and river levels. Good afternoon. The rivers have crested and they're on their way down.
But what's the situation look like today? Well, News 4's Peter Bernard is in Jetcopter 4. He is above that flooded area with the latest look. Peter?
Robin and Jim, it's a different month, but it's the same old story. This time it's 57 degrees out instead of 92. We're hovering above Valley Park, one of the hardest hit areas because of the roaring Merrimack River. We're going to take a look and see what's outside the helicopter right now. You can see a railroad bridge where the railroad has parked a couple of rail cars there. Well, that's kind of insurance for them. What they're doing right there is using it as ballast so that the bridge doesn't go anywhere, and the weight of the rail cars helps them out. If you pan up to the north, you can see what's going on in Valley Park. Strong current of water from the Merrimack. The water is lapping at the door of the Carroll House Furniture Store, if you know where that is. And you can see some from videotape that we took earlier that almost all roads in the city's old section are underwater. It's obviously much higher today than it was when I was in town on Saturday. It looks like several feet of water is in many homes and businesses. If you're a commuter, you know that 141 is flooded out at I-44. The southbound 44 ramps from 141 are flooded. The only ramp open, as a matter of fact, is south off of 44. Some businesses in the area flooded that you'll probably see as you go along I-44. 84 Lumber, they're flooded out. The Silo X haunted house is flooded, as is a stable that a lot of people know as they go by on I-44. So Valley Park, definitely a flooded town this morning. The good news we understand is the Merrimack has reached its crest and should be going down. We'll have more information of that later on in the newscast. Going on to Arnold now in our aerial tour. This is Arnold Park.
Businesses and flooded out roads. News Channel 5's Michelle Hoffland has spent the last 3 days in Valley Park and is live now with the latest on the high water. Michelle?
Well, Art and Jennifer, all weekend, people here who live on the eastern end of Valley Park have been forced out of their homes because of the floodwaters. Now, once again today, families are gathering here on the new shores of the Merrimack River, just waiting.
Standing by, waiting for them to let us come in, waiting for the water to go down so we can get in there and see what damage has been done to our homes.
Well, from what I heard from my brother-in-law and my husband, they say between 3 and 4 foot of water. That was at 6 o'clock last night, so I don't know, it could have came up more.
We're in the low part. Is it worth moving back in when you...
It's my hometown. I'll always be there.
This is what the streets look like near the McCabe's house. Only the U.S. Coast Guard has been allowed to take boats into this area over the weekend. Police say the current is too swift to let anyone else in. That means most of the 300 families who evacuated haven't seen their homes in 3 days. But they have seen this, the swollen, swift-moving Merrimack River. Water began pouring over the banks last Thursday. The water is close to covering the railroad tracks in town. A train has been parked here to hold the tracks down, and so far, it's working. Adam McCabe doesn't remember the last big flood in town. That was back in 1982, when he was just 4 years old. But he says he'll never forget this one.
The bad parts is our houses are getting flooded, and the good parts are we're missing school.
Well, it was close, but the water never made it up to the Valley Park School. However, it looks like it will be closed through Wednesday. The school officials say that it's just too difficult for all these displaced families to get their kids to class. Now, the water has dropped out here about 2 feet since I was out here last night. The people who live here are encouraged, and they hope that the worst is over. They hope that soon that they'll be able to see these streets and their homes again. Reporting live from Valley Park, Michelle Hoffland, News Channel 5.
Michelle, what's the status of businesses in Valley Park? Have they been affected by the flooding?
Well, they certainly have. The city hall is surrounded by water. The fire department's flooded out. The police department's flooded out. The county health department has closed the Southwest Health Center in Valley Park, and the patients should call the South Health Center in Limay. The fire department and the post office have been relocated to the Sacred Heart Catholic Church, and that's also where the Red Cross is located right now. And the city hall has been relocated to the Valley Park United Methodist Church.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle.
And as Michelle mentioned, the Merrimack River still causing problems in the Valley Park area. Flooding forced families out of their homes and also affected traffic in the area. Parts of Highway 141 are shut down because of high water, and county police are advising motorists to find alternate routes.
141, the state highway, has shut it down at the underpass at 44. So if you're coming northbound on 141 and you want to go north further, you're going to have to take Bowles Avenue to the outer road and then go either east or west on 44 and then north and south on 270.
The county police also tell News Channel 5 that one lane of Highway 109 and Old State Road have been reopened to traffic just north of Eureka. Residents and business owners in Chesterfield Valley
Will come again. Good evening. I'm Karen Foss.
And I'm Rick Edlund. Thank you for joining us. We begin our Flood Watch 93 coverage tonight along the Merrimack River in Valley Park.
Days and days of rain closed roads and shut down businesses, but now the water is beginning to recede. News Channel 5's Michelle Hoffland is in Valley Park and joins us now with the latest. Michelle?
Well, Karen and Rick, now they're saying that a total of 350 homes and 60 businesses are flooded in the eastern half of the city of Valley Park. Well, tonight, this over here, this is what the people are keeping their eye on, and that is the water line here. This is I guess you would say, the shore of the Merrimack River. Just 24 hours ago, the water was clear all the way up here, and now the water is receding. And that's just enough so some people can begin the chore of cleaning up. Like hundreds of other homes and businesses in Valley Park, the basement at City Hall is underwater. You can see the table and chairs peeking out of the water, but it appears the records stacked up high didn't get wet. Next door, the city street department doesn't have a basement, but this area was covered with water just 24 hours ago.
It hadn't been real bad. It wasn't maybe 5.5, 6 inches in here, and we got in right behind it before it really got dry, so we just kind of watered it down and squeezing it out now.
City police are still not allowing anyone to drive or take boats out here. It's not safe, but homeowners can wade through the water to get to their houses. The Reese family is getting their first look at their homes since they evacuated a few days ago. Their house is still an island, and they think they had about 4 inches of water inside the house.
It's shocking, you know, you see water all around your house, you're thinking, boy, what a mess, you know. Then you got to go in and deal with it, but just like I told her, I said if we could be worse, we could have had all that backwater everybody else was unfortunate, you know, everybody else got.
This looks bad, but the folks who live here know it could have been a lot worse. Almost everyone who lives here remembers the big flood back in 1982. The water this time on this street only got about this high. Back in 1982, the water was all the way up to here. This is what it looked like 11 years ago. Today, here's that same building. Valcor Printing moved in here after the flood. Today, they began starting the presses back up and carrying in the supplies they did move out. But the sandbags are going to stay.
Chesterfield, they got hit twice real close together, and it may happen here again. So we're going to keep them and make sure it doesn't.
The city building inspector began assessing the damage this afternoon. The good news is he doesn't think that he has seen any homes that he'll have to condemn. However, he adds that he hasn't been able to get even close to some of the homes that are close to the Merrimack over there, and those are the ones he says that are most likely have received the most damage. Reporting live from Valley Park, I'm Michelle Hoffland, News Channel 5.
Michelle, some of this, of course, is guesswork, but when are these people going to be able to drive back to their homes?
Well, the police chief says as soon as you can see dry pavement on the roads behind me, and not until then. He said that's just much too dangerous. However, what they're hoping now is that the water should be back within the banks of the Merrimack by Thursday morning.
All right, let's hope so.
Thanks, Michelle.
Try and make alternate plans and start early.
Just take it slow. Thanks, Bruce.
We're not alone with flood problems. Record flooding is
Park, the hardest hit town this time around. Floodwaters are already starting to recede. But Laurie Waters reports the flooding misery is far from over.
Eastbound travelers on Highway 44 got a sample view of what Valley Park is up against. The swollen Merrimack has claimed 50 to 75 businesses and hundreds of homes, forcing residents to find shelter elsewhere.
I've been staying over at my brother's for a couple days until, just to get me and the kids out of there. And we come back here today because there's a lot of people that live with them, and we're going to stay here in the shelter until we can get back in our home.
About 26 found shelter at Sacred Heart Church last night. More are expected tonight. The city government, fire department, police, and even the post office are evacuees. The first inkling of trouble came last week.
My daughter called me at work and said that the water was 2 blocks from the house.
The Merrimack flooded 141 beneath Highway 44, creating a monstrous rush hour this morning. Now, the water has been receding today, but as you can see behind me, this intersection is still impassable. Federal disaster aid is already available here since the county is still a certified disaster area from the summer flood. Some newer residents say this is their first and their last flood. But some veterans are remarkably unfazed. In 1982, Dennis Friedman saw 17 homes, half his block, wash away.
he's not going anywhere.
That kind of weeded out the lightweights back in '82. So, you know, if they're still there now, they'll probably last through this one.
The water crested this morning, earlier than expected. Without additional rain, residents may be back in their homes for cleanup by week's end. Lori Waters, News 4 in Valley Park.
Now, Mike Roberts will give us an extended forecast.
To get back to their homes and businesses to begin cleaning them up until this pavement is dry. And some say that could be at least another 2 or 3 days. Now, this is the 4th time in 11 years this area has vanished beneath the floodwaters. The worst was back in 1982. It was so bad back then that some business owners moved to higher ground. Well, now some homeowners say they've had it with the high water and they want out. But the mayor of Valley Park is asking everyone to be patient.
We do have a flood levee, our Army Corps of Engineer flood levee that is actually supposed to be completed by 1995-96. And hopefully the citizens, Valley Park citizens, which are very strong, and they're very dedicated people, but hopefully they will stick with Valley Park and we will get this levee completed so that, you know, we will not have this happen again.
Well, this time the Merrimack rose 16 feet above the flood stage, but last time, back in 1982, the floodwaters rose, gosh, another 8 feet higher than that. Well, one positive thing that the flood of 1982 brought to this, and that's experience. The fire chief, the police chief, and the mayor say that this time they were much better prepared to handle all the emergencies and to handle the crowds, and so far everything seems to be running fairly smoothly. Reporting live from Valley Park, Michelle Hoffland, News Channel 5.
Okay, Michelle, thank you.
In the meantime, the Army Corps of Engineers
heads down the
It's kind of the temporary home here for the Valley Park Fire Department because they were in the flood zone. Good news is, though, these fire trucks may be able to go back into the building shortly because the water from the Merrimack and a nearby creek on the way down tonight, so they should be able to get in there soon. And as we mentioned, water going down here in the Valley Park in other areas means the slow task of cleaning up is beginning. One by one, volunteers are removing the sandbags that surround the Valley Park schools. Floodwater got close, but not too close. Officials say the water has gone down enough to safely remove the protective barriers.
Well, with all the information that man has, we've been told that that's a prudent thing that we can do. Obviously, things can happen, but we believe that it's a reasonable decision.
School buses filled with textbooks still will have to be unloaded, and empty classrooms will have to be restocked with desks and supplies. These volunteers will have to remove some 15,000 sandbags. They will take them away from the doors and end up stacking them on wooden pallets like this one. The superintendent says the bags will stay on the school campus just in case the river and creek rise again. Along the Big River in Jefferson.
School students, another unexpected day off. Volunteers have begun to remove sandbags put in place there to protect the school. Officials have determined the water will not flood the building, but school is still canceled for tomorrow because many students have been forced from their homes and some roadways are still impassable.
Not floodwater, but drinking.
And most of the people who live here in Valley Park have seen these streets flooded before, but this time when they evacuated, many people feared that when they did return home, they wouldn't have anything to return to, that this water would destroy everything. Well, today the water dropped about 2 feet. That means many people began returning home to see what they could salvage.
I'm scared. I know what I'm going to find. A lot of stuff I had in my basement I put out in my shed, but I know that's going to be all over, so, and I don't know if it's in my house.
Pam Reed, her son, and her neighbor, Jerry Fitzinger, were nervous. They not only feared of what they'd find, but also what they would encounter in their 3-block walk through the knee-deep water. The water is so murky you can't see the road, and whitewater rapids are still rushing through the streets. The first stop, Jerry's auto repair shop.
We had hoped it wouldn't get over 5 feet, you know, and it evidently never. Only got about 3 feet in here, so that's good. We won't be as bad to clean up. Well, we need to do it now, start staying with it now while the water's going down so we can get the dirt out of it, you know, so we can get the mud out. We'll just throw away all the stuff that got wet and start over.
Pam was worried she was going to have to start over, too. Her yard is still a lake. Then she looked closer and got the good news. Flood water stopped just 1 inch from her home.
I thought it was going to be horrible, worse than this. Is it?
Yeah, completely out.
More good news, my fuse box is out of water.
But many of these streets still are not out of the water. But we understand the Merrimack River, which is a couple blocks that way, should drop within the flood stage by Thursday. A couple important notes to pass along to the folks around here. The Valley Park School will remain closed tomorrow. And also a disaster assistance center will be set up in that high school on Friday and Saturday from 9 until 6 o'clock at night. There, flood victims are urged to go to get, quote, one-stop shopping for flood disaster relief. Reporting live from Valley Park, Michelle Hoffland, News Channel 5.
It's like the summer. It looks like the river, but it's not really where she's standing. Thanks, Michelle.
And in the meantime, Chesterfield residents say they feel like they have won the fight with the water.
Four-part harmonizations are still